North-South Connection, welcome back to another NoSo Countdown. We're talking about number 31 of the 40 for 40 WrestleMania Countdown on Kofi Kingston. Of course, I am producer Tim from No Holds Barred, as well as Viewer's Choice here on the North-South Connection with my good close personal friend Marcus. But today, I am joined with another close personal friend, a person who I speak to every week on Facebook over at the 3CT Podcast Live, facebook.com/3Count Thursday. It is Big Jim Nies. Jim, how are you doing, my man?
Well, besides being a little odd being in the drive or the passenger seat of the car today, otherwise I'm doing great, man. I think this is my first time in the NoSo realm as like a on-air guy. Like I listen to a lot of the stuff, but man, it's a good time.
Yeah, I think you may have filled in once for Viewer's Choice some time ago, maybe for an NXT, but that's neither here nor there. We can retcon it. This is your first time. Welcome aboard.
Sure, absolutely.
So we're here talking about Kofi Kingston and his WrestleMania resume. And of course, you all watching along at YouTube, please like, share, ring the notification bell, go back and literally watch everything else that's here on the NoSo. But you see the match resume here, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, no 29, but then a lot of smatterings at 30. But of all of the Kofi Kingston moments and memories you have at WrestleMania, is there one that immediately comes to mind? I know there is for me. I just want to see if we're in the same accord.
I mean, it's got to be 35, right? Like it's got to be Kofi Mania. I mean, he's been really, when you look at the WWE roster, he's been one of the longer tenured superstars in the company now at this point. I mean, I think you're talking like what, Sheamus, Orton. I mean, Kofi's up there. You know, and for everything that he's done, it really doesn't get any bigger than winning the WWE championship with the New Day at his side at what was at the time one of the biggest WrestleMania events in company history. So yeah, that's always going to be number one, I think.
Same with me. Like WWE's first African WWE champion, second black superstar, if you're including The Rock in that conversation. I know some people are divisive about it,
right?
But this is he is included in a top 5 WrestleMania moment of all time. And Dave Meltzer is a real son of a gun having this match at 4.5 stars. When I don't know what it's missing, but it was a fantastic match. It was a fantastic after with the unveiling of the WWE Championship, getting rid of the eco-friendly title, and just the build up for Kofi Mania with gauntlet match that the New Day had to go through to get Kofi the opportunity, the Usos doing their thing and letting them slide, giving them the pass. Like, it was an emotional roller coaster. I know I cried like a baby when Kofi won, because I've always been a Kofi Kingston fan, a Kofi Kingston stan, and a New Day stan. But aside from Kofi Mania, the other thoughts I have of him in WrestleMania aren't him wrestling. Like, when I think of Kofi at WrestleMania, I think of the entrance with the big giant Booty-O's box.
Yeah.
And I think of the aftermatch with the New Day in the League of Nations, where the New Day get beat up by Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, and Mick Foley, which I believe is the same match.
It is. Yeah, it was 32.
Right. And then, of course, you have their hosting duties at WrestleMania 33, where they're responsible for another all-time WrestleMania moment, and that is the unprompted return of Matt and Jeff Hardy in that ladder match, where everybody thought it was going to be the New Day injecting themselves in, but instead we all get to do the juke one more time at WrestleMania. The moons out, darkness is spread across the Florida sky for 33, and out come the Hardy Boys. But is it fair to look at the rest of that match resume? Because I know he's in a couple of Money in the Banks, and he's in a lot of multi-man matches. Like at least his first 5 matches are all big, giant, multi-person, non-traditional match types. Do you think that having that many kind of hurts a legacy of Kofi's, or is it kind of solidifying who he is, which is, at least for me, the ultimate glue guy?
Yeah, I think it's a situation where, I mean, you have the 2 Money in the Banks and you have some tag matches. Like, you know, for a long time he was he's been a tag guy. Like, you know, I think when you look at the careers of Kofi Kingston and Big E and Xavier Woods, they're always going to be tied together. They're always going to be, the first thing that comes to your mind is always going to be the New Day. And obviously Kofi had a career before that, and so did Big E, and Xavier you know, had his outside of WWE career. But these guys are always going to be the New Day. Like, that's going to be what you think of them most, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like for me, looking over the match resume, that Mania 36 match, the tag team triple threat, which is such a weird thing to say, and I think COVID had something to do with that. But
yeah,
but like in a year that was so weird, and obviously we're talking about it now, of course, like I think when we're recording this is like 4 years to the day where a former president said that there was going to be like it was going to be gone real soon. And but you know, like that Mania was so strange. But man, those 3 guys, Kofi and Jimmy Uso and John Morrison, put on an absolute banger. Probably maybe the best match of the 2 days of events. I mean, you take away the cinematics, but that was one of the better matches of that Mania, and I remember just really being blown away by 3 guys going out and fighting for a tag team title in a ladder match. And it was awesome. They absolutely killed it. So like when I think about Kofi Kingston, I don't think I get lost too much in the you know, gimmick matches or tag team this or Money in the Bank that. I think I just look at a guy who's always been really good. And when you're in those matches, you have to be a good hand. You have to be a trusted hand, and Kofi's always been that. He's always been reliable. Yeah, and obviously outside of the big moments, the hosting moments, the Booty-O's box moment, and I think I thought I had my Booty-O's box in the background here. It's somewhere in this basement, but yeah, I think he's always been very good, like good to great. So that is the legacy to me of Kofi Kingston.
Do you feel as though with what he has on tap and what he's done, including those non-match type moments, does that adequately put him at 31, you think? Like there's 40 years of WrestleMania. It is a Herculean task to even think about the top 40 performers of all time, much less what Ryan and JT have been doing every day on YouTube and TikTok, where they have been ranking every single WrestleMania match from the 400 and something worst match of all time to number 1. Do you think 31 is a fair number for Kofi, or do you think that there's probably people, because we don't know what the list is,
sure,
right? But if you can just thinking in your head of like the creme de la creme, the top of the heap of WrestleMania performers, do you think Kofi cracks a top 40 for WrestleMania performers?
Man, that's a tough question. And you know, I think this is going to be a topic that may get stolen on another platform.
Maybe.
Maybe. But wow, I mean, don't.
So to help you answer the question, like looking back through, because obviously we don't know what's ahead of us. We don't know who 30
Sure.
through 1 is. But just to recap who we've gone through, we've got Bobby Lashley at 40, Eddie Guerrero at 39, The Demolition at 38, Sheamus at 37, Drew McIntyre at 36, Jericho, Bianca Belair, Christian, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat all come before Kofi, Kofi being 31. And so knowing who Kofi's ahead of, that kind of knocks some of the people off your list, and not like re-ranking people and saying, oh, well, Jericho should actually be infinitely higher.
Right.
Kofi at 31 is, I feel as though, like, at least me, I might nitpick and fight for low 20s, but 31 sounds good with all thoughts, because if you look at the actual matches, it's maybe like one or two really solid matches that he's a big focal point on, which is of course Kofi Mania and the ladder match that most of time will not remember because it was all held in front of one fan.
Right, literally one giant fan.
WWE's biggest fan.
Man, 31. If anything, I might slip him back a little bit. I think top 40 all encompassed when you think about moments. You think about the number of people. I think the title win, I think, boosts him up. Without a title win, I don't know if I would put him in the top 40. But there's literally there's definitely been less than 40 guys who have won the WWE championship at WrestleMania. I don't know the exact count, but given that we're going into WrestleMania 40, I know there's been less than 40. So even right there, that's a major achievement to win the WWE championship at WrestleMania. And then when you put some of these other moments and the fact that, like, again, you trusted him to be one of the performers, to be in this match at a WrestleMania in front of a fan with no audience and just commentators at a time where nothing made sense. That's a pretty big deal. So I don't know if I would have him locked in at 31, but I think top 40 is fair.
I don't know if anybody noticed that I just kind of like went into like a Rain Man status.
I saw you mathing really hard.
Oh my gosh. I was trying to math so hard. I got all the way up to WrestleMania 21 in my head. And I'm like, we're sitting at like 15 title changes between WrestleMania 1 and 21.
And when I'm strictly, I'm not counting the world heavyweight title.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't doing that either.
Yeah,
but it's
I'm just talking WWE championship. So like, yeah, I mean, there's a small number of people that have won that title at Mania. So it does mean something. So I think he would belong in the top 40 at least.
And I think for sure, because of what his title reign or his title win meant, the build up to it kind of, it's like a 1.5, right? It's not just a title win. It means so much more. It meant so much more to the community, both the wrestling community and even the Black wrestling community. Just so much. I mean, I remember the video of late great Shad Gaspard and MVP at a bar watching WrestleMania and crying like Kofi did it. I think if you're picking, you're splitting hairs if you're moving him up or down. I think 31 is like the Three Bears just right.
Right.
Not quite too high. Like maybe a ceiling of like number 27, maybe a floor of like 34. Split the diff. 31's your number.
Yeah. I'm not gonna without spending more time than I need to actually map out, my top 40. Then it would just be splitting hairs. And yeah, like, I mean, would I maybe have Jericho a little higher, possibly, but yeah, I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be a, hard battle to go, no, he's got to be 33, dang it. Like,
right, of course. Of course. But Let us know in the comments if we got this right, if we got this wrong. However, interaction's the best. And if you don't necessarily have an opinion, just leave your favorite emoji in the bottom. Let us know that you were here and that you enjoy the content that we put out on the regular on the NoSo. I'm here all the time. We're always here all the time. Big Jim, you got any plugs before we get out of here and pass this over to the next men in line?
Oh man, I got plenty of things to plug. Now that we're in the well, let me get to the three count first. I mean, that's the joint project you and I and the crew have. We are approaching 10 years over at 3 Count Thursday, 3CT, the 3CT pod. So we are live every Thursday. We are on the podcast side every Tuesday. You can get us Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at 3 Count Thursday. Always the number 3, never the word 3. And the YouTube channel. You can hit 3countthursday.com, hit the link tree and all of our social media. It'll take you to everything 3CT related. I am the CEO of Huddle Up Podcast Incorporated. And we are in the off season over there. So we're going to be getting together soon to get some of our off season content, but we're usually live every week during the football season. You can get us Huddle Up Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're at Huddle Up Podcast Inc. And I also do discussions with a nobody. So basically it's everything that isn't wrestling and sports. I tackle over there. So I'm sure this year is going to be plenty of politics. There's music talk, there's movie talk. Basically anything that comes into my big dumb head. We'll get worked out on that feed. But you can see it right there on the screen with me. I'm at Big Jim Sports on Twitter. I have my own link tree in my feed that'll take you to all of the things that I do. So if you got lost in the maze that is all of those things I just previously said, just hit the link tree at Big Jim Sports and it'll take you to all my projects.
Of course. And he mentions his big dumb head. And if you've seen how big and how dumb the head is, there's so many thoughts.
It's not a lot.
It's just a lot of empty space. It's like Pong. Just one ball bouncing back and forth through the hollows of his brain. But I kid. Jim, thank you so much for the time. Thank you, NoSo. And we move along to number 30.
NoSo Countdown. We are here today to talk about number 30, and that is going to be Drew McIntyre. I am the chosen one, Logan Calum, and I have with me today the Scottish psychopath himself, Calum McDougall. How you doing, Calum?
I'm very well, Logan. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for that introduction, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I couldn't think of anybody else to have on with me to talk about Drew McIntyre here tonight. So, but yeah, he's number 30 on this countdown. We'll talk about his resume as we kind of go. But first of all, when you think of Drew McIntyre and WrestleMania, what's kind of the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, WrestleMania 36 would be the one. Not the WrestleMania that we all sort of anticipated. I know a few of you guys were ready to go a couple of weeks before, ready to go to Tampa, but I just remember staying up to watch the 2 nights it was one of the very first sort of calls that we had over during COVID to watch WrestleMania 36. I remember that really watching him win the big one, and I got to do it with some great company, if not in the best of circumstances.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of was my first thing that popped into my head. You know, it's a big moment. Sadly, he doesn't get to do it in front of fans. He gets to do it in the situation that they were kind of in. He wins the belt there, and I think he did a good job as champion in a tough time. But yeah, that's definitely before last year. That's definitely what came into my mind with last year's match. Kind of as we'll get into, that one's probably going to be the one that stands out through the test of time. It's kind of new now, so it's not something that's like, oh, that's the thing that's, that might not be necessarily the thing that stands out to you right away as like his big memory. But we'll go through his matches real quick. We'll start with WrestleMania 26. He was in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Meltzer went 3 3/4 on it. Mr. John Canton went 3 1/2, and Chad Campbell from the North-South Connection here went 3 3/4 as well. Do you remember much about that match, or what's your memories of his kind of involvement in that one?
Pretty much, it was a Money in the Bank match at that sort of time. It's your usual fare for that sort of match. I remember more that he obviously walked in Intercontinental Champion, so you're thinking he's actually got a good chance of winning. And you look at the other guys in the match, you don't see a clear favourite there. So yeah, I thought probably at the time he had a fair chance of winning, but as you get with the memorable moments, not necessarily guys like Drew. It's like I remember Evan Bourne having a good showing in that one. Drew was just there. It was just one of these. It was one of these things when you've got a match with 10 guys. Not a lot of time for you to shine in it. But saying that, disappointing that might have been a good time to pull the trigger on him, but it wasn't to be at that point in time.
Yeah, he was fairly new to the Chosen One kind of character at that point, I'm pretty sure. So it seemed like, and I think watching the match, I kind of heard the commentary a little bit that Vince had kind of like skewed it so he could qualify, because I think he had lost a couple qualifying matches and he kind of wanted him to be in the match. So, he kind of helped him eventually get a shot to be in the match. But like you said, it's 10 guys. People get muddled in those kind of matches with that many guys in there. I do think he was involved a lot in the beginning of the match, and even he has his little shine segment where he's almost there, but I think somebody cuts him out. I want to say it's Christian. So he definitely, I think out of the guys in it, I think Christian was a big favorite going into that one, because I just think he had that whole ECW thing. He had kind of carried that brand, so it would have been kind of smart to go with him. I think Drew was a hot heel character at the time. He was IC champ, like you said, and then obviously Swagger wins, so probably kind of got lost in the shuffle for the most part. But his next match is at WrestleMania 28. I believe he was in a pre-show battle royal at 27, but we're talking about main card stuff here. But 28, he was in the Team Johnny versus Team Teddy 12-man tag. He was on Team Johnny, of course, as he was still a heel. Meltzer went 2 1/4. Canton went 2 1/2, and Chad went 2 on this. It's a 12-man tag for brand supremacy or GM supremacy or whatever. I don't really think he's super duper involved in this one. This is more a Zack Ryder story, kind of as he had been, the hot baby face on SmackDown, had the U.S. title and all that, and had the stuff with Cena and all that. So not a big Drew match, but what do you kind of think of this one?
It's better than being in the pre-show battle royal. It's probably a slight upgrade from the year before. And if you look at the other guys that's in the match, it's not an insignificant position to be in, because you've got The Miz, who headlined the year before, Mark Henry, who I think not long after he was world champion. I think he was world champion at the end of the year before. So he's in with some big name guys, but again, it's these things. You're trying to showcase 12 guys in 10 minutes. It's a bit of a difficult order, and as you say, it was more the Zack Ryder story, having been like the hottest commodity really, in the mid card anyway at that time. It was probably his story, and it was more focused on Johnny and Teddy as well. But the guys sort of an afterthought at that point as well. So, yeah, just another one where he gets sort of lost in the shuffle, unfortunately.
Yeah, this first run of his is kind of his WrestleMania thing. It seems like, as we'll kind of get into our next match in a minute. But yeah, he didn't really get that opportunity to shine in that one-on-one match in his first run. So we'll go on to the next one. He's in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, of course, won by Cesaro, last eliminating the Big Show. All 3 guys gave it a 3. I'd say that's pretty accurate. It's probably one of the best battle royals in company history. It's really entertaining. Cesaro was a good winner. Drew and the 3MB guys actually are really involved in the early parts, and they actually get some good shine. So I don't know if there was like a thought to do something with them at this point, but they actually do eliminate quite a few other lower card guys. But him, Slater, and Mahal actually shine a little bit at the beginning of this one. But what did you think of this battle royal?
A 3 is probably a fair shout from all 3 guys. I think, as you say, it's one of the battle royals can be here or there. They can be either sort of a bit nondescript until the last few guys are in, or you can have it goes in sections where you've got, as you say, 3MB get their shine, then you've got the next sort of the next bit where a couple of other guys get their shine. It just moves on. I think 3MB at this time, if you watch the Drew documentary, 3MB not necessarily the best time in his life. So getting a shine at WrestleMania like that was probably a big deal for him. And I'm just trying to think about the time now, because I know that Drew gets a pretty bad, there's a shoulder injury not long after 3MB start. I can't quite remember my time whether or not this is right at the very start of 3MB or whether or not this is him having his big moment after he's had the injury derail him a bit. But either way, getting the shine like he did in the Andre Battle Royal, I mean, it's slightly more prestigious than your regular WrestleMania Battle Royal. Despite it being a Battle Royal, it's more of an upgrade than the pre-show. We'll stick everybody in, so it's not a wasted trip for them type of effort. This actually had some meaning. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe a slight downgrade from Money in the Bank, Team Johnny, Team Teddy, but it's certainly not the worst position to be in.
I think it's probably a slight upgrade from Team Teddy, Team Johnny, but I'll digress. But and it was the first Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. They really hyped it up.
Yeah.
You know, they made a big deal about it. You know, Big Show wears the Andre singlet and everything. So it was a big deal. And it seemed like it was going to, you know, skyrocket Cesaro after this. I think this is kind of towards the end of Drew's first run. So I think he had probably gotten past the shoulder injury at this point. I think he lasts for a few more months, and then he obviously leaves the company, goes to TNA, a couple other. I think he wrestles in the UK a lot during the period where he's gone, but he was in Impact for a bit, became their world champion, of course. But he comes back. He does the NXT thing for a little bit, but his first WrestleMania opponent when he comes back is at WrestleMania 35, which was in New York. He faced Roman Reigns, who had also previously or had recently come back from his leukemia scare that he had the previous year. Obviously the situation, you were going to bring Roman back, and probably wasn't going to lose. They wanted him to be the conquering babyface coming back from obviously that battle that he went through. The guys gave it, Meltzer gave it 2, Canton gave it 2 1/4, Chad gave it 2 3/4. It's a pretty basic match. It's pretty much to get Roman over, kind of get him back in the swing of things. It's not the just greatest match, but it's a fine match. It's not going to blow anybody away, but it was a perfectly fine match. What do you think of the Roman match there? Yeah,
because Roman had missed a good bit of the year before because of his cancer issue, and I remember being on the main event the week before this, and I think it was the focus was on Roman coming back and how he'd beat cancer, and now it was excellent that he was back in the ring. And it was, even to me, it was lost on how big of a position this was for Drew at the time. Because this is obviously the guy come back after a horrific setback, and he's now at WrestleMania against and Drew McIntyre is the guy who's been chosen to give him the match. With Drew in the ring, Roman wasn't going to embarrass himself. He wasn't going to be put in that position where a bit of ring rust was going to show through. Drew was the Dr. G certified good hand in the ring there for him. Yeah, and what a position for the guy. Had been away for the WWE for 4 years, and within a year he's sort of handed the keys to say, make her look good, make sure he has a good match, and it shows the faith they had in him straight away. And I think it's only recently, with everything that's gone past, obviously now he's at the top of the card as a permanent fixture. That's obviously when they saw something in him to say that you're the next guy to make sure this company's going to be okay.
Yeah, they definitely trusted him in this situation. Obviously, like you said, putting him with their perceived top guy at this point. And having him be his first real big match on a big stage, so that was a big spot for him, and I think he pulled through. And like throughout the next year, he definitely built himself up the card. Obviously, he wins the Royal Rumble the next year, so he gets his title shot at WrestleMania 36 against Brock Lesnar. Obviously, it was supposed to be in Tampa, it was supposed to be in front of fans, but the pandemic hit, and he got this 4-minute match where it's pretty much just bomb. They just go back and forth with each other. Meltzer didn't rate it because of the pandemic, I'm sure, is the reason he didn't put a rating on that one. But Canton gave it 2, Chad gave it 3. Like I said, it's just a bomb fest. They hit finisher after finisher, Claymore after Claymore, after F5, after German suplex. So they just go at it and just throw down for a little less than 5 minutes, but it's entertaining for what it is. Obviously, you would have liked to have seen him have a longer match in front of fans, but this was kind of the Brock Lesnar style at this point, whether he won it or not, or whether he lost. It kind of became the match that he had. It was the shorter version where you just back and forth, just big move after big move. So obviously this was the moment that we kind of thought of first, but any other thoughts about this Brock Lesnar title win?
Yeah, I mean, I think albeit the short time, I think time was probably the same match that they were going to have in Tampa, but
probably
slightly shorter. They just sort of condensed what was going to be like a 15-minute match down to that. Instead of having all the sort of breaks in between, they just went for it, which I think is perfectly fine. It's going to be one of the shorter main events in WrestleMania history, or maybe the shortest. I don't think it takes away. The only thing that it takes away, as you said, is the fact that this guy's worked so hard, left, come back. He's now at the top of the mountain, and he's on the mountain by himself with only Michael Cole and Corey Graves in attendance. The guy's worked so hard to get to this point and bask in the moment as he should have done. It was a fine match. I think 2 is... I think Chad's probably in the region 3 there for just a short bomb fest. It's very much like the Goldberg-Lesnar match from 34. And that was highly rated as well. I think you're probably looking at the same region as that if it was in a full stadium. But if you were asking me my star rating for it, absolutely nailed on, 7 stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Breaks the Belzer scale, of course.
8 stars every day of the week.
Who's Will Ospreay? I'm just kidding. But yeah, absolutely. Just 3 is probably what I would go. But yeah, I think it definitely had potential to be greater than that if it had fans. And you can tell after the match, it means a lot to him. He hates that it's in front of, pretty much no one. I mean, people are watching around the world, but it meant a lot to him still. He thanks the camera afterwards. So it definitely was a big moment for him. It should have been bigger. I wish it could have been bigger for him, but it obviously, the world just wasn't where it needed to be at that point. So, but the next year, he pretty much holds the title. He loses it to Randy for a little bit, but gets it back. Loses it to Miz on a cash in at one point a little bit before WrestleMania, and then Lashley beats Miz for the title, and then Drew and Bobby Lashley meet at WrestleMania 37, which was in Tampa. Limited fans, but I was in attendance. This is the very first match that you see night 1. I thought they just absolutely threw down and had a great physical slap and meat kind of match that I think Sean would say that's kind of one of his catchphrases now. But it's a big bomb meat fest, kind of like the previous year had been. So I was really entertained by this one. Thought it was a great way to kind of kick off the weekend. But what did you think of his match with Bobby?
For the first match back in front of fans, I think it was the big match that I think everyone in attendance deserved, because everyone has been through a lot in the year before. I know there was a contingent of NoSo and Place2Beers that were there in attendance. I think we did one of the live watches, and you guys called in from live on location. It was obviously a good atmosphere to be in, and I think it's Drew getting the chance to be, because he was obviously as the challenger, he was the first person out in front of a crowd in over a year. I think that was a big thing, because he had held the company together during the Thunderdome and the pandemic era. And the match itself was great. This is probably, we're talking about Lesnar and Drew the year before being a condensed version of a 15-minute match. This was probably the match that Drew and Lesnar might have had the year before. A bit more finesse when you've got Bobby Lashley involved. But as bittersweet as it was to see Drew not walk in to WrestleMania as a champion, seeing Lashley walk in as champion was good, because Lashley was on a tear at that point. So you had 2 of the best guys in the company at the time opening up WrestleMania, and they took the ball and ran with it and did something special that night, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it was a genuine surprise that Bobby ended up retaining. I thought they were going to do the thing where, it was supposed to be his moment last year. Let's give him his moment here. So definitely was surprised to see Lashley walk out with the title. And he wins with the Hurt Lock. He passes out and all that good stuff. So definitely a shocking result at the time. But like you said, it was a great match. That Mania will always mean a little more to me because of the situation, because of the previous year kind of getting it taken away from you and getting to go and be one of the fans in attendance. I'll always be a little higher on that one just because it was a special trip. It was a great bonding time for all of us that went. But yeah, the show on top of it made it even better. So that Tampa one will always stand out to me for sure. I was live at the next one as well. We'll go to 38. He took on it says Baron Corbin, but he was Happy Corbin at this point. He was very positive and cheery. He was Happy Corbin. He had Madcap Moss with him with his suspenders and his little shorts at the time. So this one went about 8 minutes, or a little over 8.5 minutes. Meltzer gave it 2 3/4. Kent gave it 3, and Chad gave it 3.5. You know, this is kind of like the Roman match. I think it was a little better than the Roman match, but and a lot of people, you know, are down on Corbin. I think he plays his role, and if he's in there with somebody that can go, he can kind of match them. And Drew is one of those guys that can kind of go. So I think Corbin hung with him and stuff like that. I think Corbin's not a guy that's going to lead anybody or anything like that, but I think Drew was there to kind of be the base, and Baron, matched him with his energy. So I'm a little higher on him, of course, than a lot of people. The big thing with this match was after the match, Drew had won, and Madcap's on the apron. He gets the big sword and he hits the rope and it explodes, and they have to change the ropes after the match. So what'd you think of this one?
I remember more the post match than the actual match. Yeah, I think you're right about. I mean, it was fine. It got Drew on the card. Not necessarily the place that thought he was going to be. But certainly the time between 37 and 38 was, he was treading water a bit. He was still at the top of the card, but he wasn't at the top of the card, and then he was messing about with Madcap Moss and having matches in pay-per-view. It wasn't the best. You can see why he was potentially thinking of leaving. If this is what they were serving up. And I think you're right about Corbin. I think if his current NXT run is anything to go by, the guy's not a scrub. He can go in the ring when, as you say, when he needs to, if he's got the right dance partner in there. So I see the comparison with the Roman match as well. And all honesty, I don't think I can't remember much about this one other than the ending. It was just, he was on the card, and if he would now we're in the era of 2-night WrestleManias. If he wasn't on the card, then I'd be really disappointed. But since it was Drew that was in it, it was obviously a prominent match, because they're obviously still high on him. But yeah, it was just a bit of treading water at this time for Drew.
Yeah, it's good to see him on the card. Obviously, like you said, it's not the position you would want him to want to see him in. But Baron's a guy that they trust, and they've featured prominently for a while. They trust him to go back down to NXT like he is right now, and have good matches with the young guys, and kind of, I guess, teach them a little bit and give them a little experience with a guy that's been up on the main card. So Baron's a guy that they trust, and I think they like a lot. So, and this match, I want to say the other prominent thing about this one, other than obviously the sword breaking the rope, was Drew was actually one of the first people to break or to kick out of the end of days. So this is really like he kicked out of it in this match, and that's a real protected finisher. If he hits that, it's usually over. So he hits it at one point in the match, and Drew kicks out. So I think he's one. I don't want to say he's the first person, but he was definitely one of the early few that kicked out of that move. So I think that's the other big moment in that one. But we'll move to the most recent one. It was last year at WrestleMania 39. It is the IC triple threat match with Gunther and Sheamus. This one's pretty much regarded as one of the greatest Intercontinental Championship matches in WrestleMania history, if not just matches in general. All the three guys gave it 5 stars. Just an absolute bomb fest between these three guys. They all walk out of the match with red chest, purple and blue, just all over. So, what are your thoughts on this absolutely awesome match that we had?
Undoubtedly one of the best matches in WrestleMania history. IC title or not, I think if you saw somebody put this in a list of the top 5, it wouldn't look out of place at all. It was just excellent. It was what you wanted from the three guys, because I remember, again, we were doing the live watch, and I think everyone has anticipating this one, and they knew what sort of match it was going to be, or the match they wanted it to be. 3 guys just beating the tar out of each other, and we got that. It was one of the only times that you genuinely thought that Gunther's title was in jeopardy, because the 3 guys in there was Sheamus was on a great run. I was fortunate enough to be there for Clash at the Castle, or unfortunate enough for being a Drew fan,
Damn
being
you,
at Clash
Solo.
at the Castle. I know. Go back to NXT. Useless. But to see Gunther and Sheamus, and I didn't think that could be topped. And then you had Drew into the mix. It was just excellent. Yeah, and any top 5, top 10 WrestleMania matches of all time, it doesn't look out of place there. It was, unfortunately, he didn't come out with a win, but just unbelievable, and it was worth every single star that it was given.
Yeah, just an absolutely fantastic match. Little known fact that they don't plug very often. 2 stories were not finished that night. Sheamus's journey for the Intercontinental Championship and Cody's story were not finished. So both of the stories are still active. So everybody bags on Cody, but Sheamus didn't finish his story as well. So, but I think the guys, Sheamus has already been on this countdown, I believe already. It was Chad and somebody. I want to say it may have been Ryan, actually. They talked about Sheamus, and they talked about this match. And I think Chad made a good point. It's like 16 minutes, but it was perfectly in that range of where it was longer than, like, you know, a really good match. And it was kind of to the point where it didn't go too long at the same time. It was perfectly in that little 16-minute range where it didn't overstay its welcome, but it still had that enough time to be epic and build and just, you know, be the absolute great match that it was. And, you know, the way that I can tell that this was a great match is on commentary afterwards. It was definitely Graves and Cole, but I want to say it. Titus O'Neil might have randomly been on commentary for this one, but all 3 of them are just standing up, applauding like they're fans, and you could tell Cole had just an absolute blast calling this match. Yeah, that tells me that how great it really was, because, and you know, I think it's based on regime changes. I don't think they could have done that with Vince. I don't think they would have been allowed to do that, but yeah, I can tell it was a great match because they were having fun and they stood up after the match and just applauded the guys. So that's truly the sign of a great match as well. So we'll move on, give some other stats real quick. He had 8 total matches. His average grade was a 3.15. He had 1 main event with the title win against Brock. He was in 2 world title matches. And according to this, he was in 2 all-time matches. I'm going to go with the fact that was Bobby, the match versus Bobby, and the match we just talked about as well. You know, we've talked about the great points about him, but what do you think hurts him from being higher on this list overall?
Probably the sort of the run that he had with Team Johnny, and then the Andre Battle Royal. It's probably the least prominent he was at WrestleMania. Maybe the Corbin one again, but again, you've swayed me on Corbin because he's a guy that the trust and they've always been pretty high on. Albeit the match itself wasn't as highly rated, and it was a bit forgettable. Well, not making it onto the card at 27, where he was in the pre-show Battle Royal as well. When people like Snooki and the Core got on the card, maybe that. But I don't think I can mark him down for a show that he wasn't on. Yeah,
very true. I think those first 3, you know, kind of multi-man matches, obviously, kind of hurt his resume as a total. Obviously, I think he would be much higher if he had some more singles prominent roles at that point. And the fact that he wasn't on it consistently during his first run either. You know, like you said, he wasn't on 27, he wasn't on 29, and he obviously leaves for a few years. He has a pretty consistent resume since he came back, but I think that first run kind of hurts him for sure. Obviously, I think you probably think he's number 1. But do you think he's too high or too low on this list, or do you think he's kind of right where he needs to be?
Well, when you think of everyone that's been on a WrestleMania card, I think I don't know how many different people have ever competed at WrestleMania, but to be at 30 is probably right. If he wins the Money at the Bank at 26, he might be slightly higher, and if he doesn't tread water in the middle ones, then he's probably higher again. But yeah, I think 30 is probably about right, given the fact that, as you say, the second run is full of main event matches, because even the IC title triple threat match was more prominent matches on the card, which is slightly different to how the IC title was presented at the start in his first run. His first run had been the same as his second run, then you're talking top 20, but I think he's probably about right, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like we said, kind of when we're talking about his negatives, I think he would be much higher if he had a kind of better first run. But he also only has 8 matches. I think the people as you get higher on this card are going to be, your Shawn Michaels and your Undertakers that had multiple WrestleMania matches and lots of them at that. So I think your guys that have a few more matches to go upon are going to be higher on this list. But obviously he has the 8 and his, at least 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 8 are pretty good matches, if not great, if not all time. So yeah, I think as he continues to go, he'll rise up this list because I think he'll continue to keep putting out bangers. I think this year he's facing Rollins, of course. I think they'll have a really good match. So definitely looking forward to that one. But before we get out of here, do you have anything to plug? Anything you want to turn anybody to?
The only pod that I do on a consistent basis now is Chicken Salad over on the Place2Be wrestling feed, where myself and my good British friend Ben Locke go through the good, bad, and indifferent of professional wrestling. For those who haven't seen it, Logan is still a big part of that show. You're dearly missed, Logan. And I curate the Place2Be wrestling YouTube page. So if you want to head over there, you get daily pods, 2 or 3 pods a day, every day over there, from the Place2Be archives as well. So that's at PTB Wrestling on YouTube. So when you finish this one, head over there and give us a look. It'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, definitely listen to Calum's stuff. I miss y'all as well on Chicken Salad. I'll probably definitely hang out with you guys on an anniversary show or something like that. I'll make a special appearance. But definitely miss doing that one with you guys. But I'm on these 100 times, so you know where I am. You know what shows I'm on. Just check everything out on the North-South Connection. Everybody's putting out great stuff. So we'll see you next time.
What's going on? NoSo Countdown. This is Mike Rossi. I am joined here by Pudgy Mike. How are we doing today?
How's everything with you?
We're doing good. We are talking about CM Punk, number 29 on NoSo Countdown. Now, CM Punk has a very interesting resume as you look at his list right below us here. And you'll notice that we have 3 ratings that are out there, and there's a cumulative average. We've got, obviously, Big Dave Meltzer. We've got Canton. We've got Ryan, some ChroNoSo guys. And that brings us to an average. But we're going to start off by not even talking about a match. How's that sound, Mike?
Sounds good to me. Let's go.
Technically, CM Punk's WrestleMania debut was as an extra in the John Cena entrance back at WrestleMania 22. What are your thoughts on that one?
Looking back at it now, a lot of the guys that he was talking a lot of smack about during his biggest tenure in the 2010s was all the guys he was kind of standing there with little machine guns behind.
Yeah, it was cool, especially when you look back at the fact that it was in Chicago too. Like, that must have been such a cool moment for him to get his first, and they zoomed right in on his face, which was really
he
cool.
didn't look happy.
So many people knew who he was too. So that was a really cool moment. So now as we get into his wrestling, he was in 7 matches at WrestleManias. Obviously, it's been 11 years. This year would have been the triumphant return if it wasn't for the Rumble injury. Now, when you think about CM Punk and his WrestleMania history, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
The fact, honestly, I'm going to sound just like him. The fact that he never headlined the Mania to me, I think it's complete neglect on WWE's part. They had so many opportunities, especially towards those later years, like right before he had left. He had so many opportunities, and it could have been with any one of these guys you see on this list too, maybe except Ray. But
right. I mean, you look at 28 and 29, he felt like the biggest star in the company for both of those. But they had John Cena and The Rock, right? So
unfortunate, yeah.
It's tough to really, make that argument at that point when there's people that are watching the show strictly for that. So that's what sucks about it, because I remember, we were just talking off air. We were both at WrestleMania 29, and even though he was the heel wrestling the beloved undefeated Undertaker, you saw more CM Punk t-shirts than anybody.
Yeah, including me. I don't know what you were wearing that day. What was your attire that day?
Oh God, I don't remember. I definitely had a Punk shirt. I think I probably had the Danielson no shirt.
Okay.
Though, for that one, but I remember that was the weekend that they released the stained glass shirt of him.
Yeah.
And everybody and their brother was wearing it by WrestleMania Sunday. So
yeah,
definitely cool. So let's get through these Money in the Banks, because obviously, if we look back at 23, this was a 19-minute, 11-second match. It was won by Mr. Kennedy, and we had CM Punk, Randy Orton, Finley, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Edge, and King Booker. There was a lot of cool stuff in this match. It was kind of, a lot of people that were ready to do some crazy shit, and they delivered. Meltzer had this at 4.25. Canton had this at 4. Ryan had 4.25. So everybody's in the same ballpark at a 4.17, which ends up being his second highest rated WrestleMania match. What are your takeaways on that Money in the Bank match?
So I would, if I had to do like some sort of rating scale, I'd probably keep it around that same average. Rookie year, right, for CM Punk, 23, 2006. So, he went in there with tons of momentum. I think he was unbeaten for 4, 5, 6 months, something like that. And he hadn't lost a match up until then, or he was on such a streak where the crowd was starting to get really behind him and thought it was kind of Punk's time to shine. But I know the whole story about Mr. Kennedy, and he was supposed to be the champion, and he got hurt, and the whole story about him having to get surgery. So I know they had big plans for Kennedy, so it wasn't like they just gave it away to somebody else. But Punk-wise in that match, I don't really remember him doing anything to jump out or separating himself from the rest of the guys. But I don't know what you think about. Do you remember anything big from Punk in that match that really separated him?
Not really. I feel like the Hardys had some big spots. I remember, Edge was, kind of the guy that was the biggest name in the match. Him and Orton really going into it. But I remember just being happy that Punk was in this spot, right?
Yeah.
As somebody that watched him in ROH and, obviously when he broke through to ECW and whatever, even some of his TNA stuff, it was really cool seeing him in a WrestleMania, especially a year after he was an extra, like we had mentioned before,
Yeah, I don't know about you, like sometimes as a fan, if I start to really, really like a female or a male wrestler, I get a little impatient with them. So seeing Punk in that, you just want to see the payoff instantly, right? And
right.
He doesn't get it. I'm like, damn, they're just gonna bury him now. And
right. No, I definitely agree. And then luckily we didn't have to wait too long, right?
No.
Because we got a CM Punk Money in the Bank in 2024. I'm sorry, WrestleMania 24. We're in 2024 now. What the hell am I talking about? Where CM Punk won the briefcase, defeating Shelton Benjamin, Chris Jericho, Carlito MVP, Mr. Kennedy, and Morrison. Now, kind of a lesser than field, and the match kind of felt that way. But at the end of the day, who really cares? Because we just wanted Punk to win this thing anyways, right?
Oh, yeah, the right guy won. If you look at the guys in that field, like you mentioned, there was really no other choice besides Punk. They were doing a great job from 23 to 24 with his build and getting the crowd really, really to get behind him at that point. So I think there might have been a riot I forgot where 24 was. Probably some sort of California place.
Oh, man, 24. I can't remember that. Let me look that up really quickly. But, yeah, 24 was definitely a match that, you're right. It was CM Punk or Riot going into this match because you're looking at everybody else there. I mean, you could have made a case for, rerunning it with Kennedy because they blew up the year before. You could make a case for Jericho, but you really couldn't have made a case for anybody else in this match. So, at the end of the day, they did the right thing by putting this in Punk's hands, and it led to him cashing in on, was it Batista?
Batista, yeah.
Yeah, so, that got him his first world title run, which was cool. And this was obviously 24 was the WrestleMania Orlando with Big Show and Mayweather. So this was definitely kind of the wrestling fans moment of this show. So while the match was kind of underwhelming, sometimes a match can be overwhelming if you're happy with the end game,
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how you feel. Like, I don't mind because 13 minutes doesn't seem like a long time for a Money in the Bank match, but I didn't mind it too much.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of happy that they got the Money in the Banks. I mean, people have their wild opinions about Money in the Banks now and how it kind of, the last few years have been unexciting and how people think it's run its course. Yeah. But I like that it's a standalone event because at WrestleManias, they kind of always lost time. They were an easy one to cut time on. And 13, 14 minutes. Now they're all like 25, 30, right?
Yeah.
So they have a little bit more room to breathe. And maybe in the 2-night Mania, it would have a little bit more of that than it does now or back in 24, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, everything that wasn't the top dogs would get their time cut at these WrestleManias,
Yeah, it's true.
So then we headed off to WrestleMania 25, which was at Reliance Stadium in Houston, Texas. That was Punk winning again. This time the field was Christian, Finley, Kane, Punk's good friend Kofi Kingston, Mark Henry, MVP, and Shelton. Now, if last year's Mania with 24 did not felt like it was the CM Punk spot based off who was in it, this one definitely did, because there's really nobody there short of maybe a Kane who had already won one, right? This is not a field. I mean, it's a field that played into a decent match, but you don't really have it loaded with world title contenders.
Not at all. And I don't know about you, but it shocked me that they put the briefcase on the same person twice. I think he might have been the first. Is he still the only one to have the briefcase twice?
By winning Money in the Bank, yes, because Edge ended up with the second Kennedy briefcase. But yeah, I don't believe anybody else won more than one,
which is surprising.
Match. Yeah.
So yeah, and it goes to show you what WWE's, how high they were on Punk at the time. So which we were all loving.
Right, and then the cash in from here led to the awesome Jeff Hardy feud, which I thought was cool. That was kind of really where we got to see like evil heel Punk, you know what I mean? Yeah. And as we start talking about the next couple years, it kind of parlayed itself into those, right? So this Money in the Bank was strong. It was probably better than the one at 24, but again, you kind of, if you're looking at this field, you kind of expected Punk to win this one, although it didn't maybe come with the same fanfare because we had already seen him win it at 24, you know?
Yeah, I was more expecting for him to win this one than the 21 and 24.
Exactly. So then at 26, we had the Straight Edge Society in play, and he had a pretty intense feud with Rey Mysterio. Now, as intense as that feud was, the payoff was 6 minutes and 30 seconds of Punk doing the favors for Mr. Mysterio on this night. Disappointing. I mean, it was one of those things that, again, as we talk about WrestleMania matches getting cut, this is a match in the current format would probably get 15 minutes, right? But back at 26, it was more about having Ray get his revenge than it was really anything with Punk, you know?
Yeah, and then you said the again like the payoff, right? Rey Mysterio loses, he joins Straight Edge Society. At the time, I wasn't really thrilled. I didn't really care to see Rey Mysterio have to join Straight Edge Society. I don't really understand the concept of it. I know Ray's pretty straight himself, but it's not like he's this guy that they had to transform. But that payoff of him having to join wasn't really the biggest payoff for me as well. But I know they had a crazy feud. I know Mysterio for a few months was like preventing him from getting into championship matches, but Punk was that. I love that Straight Edge Society stable. I just thought he did some really good work there with them.
Oh yeah, he was evil, man. Singing "Happy Birthday" to Aaliyah Mysterio.
Oh my God.
Just really just dark stuff, and it's cool to look back at those segments because you see Dom a little bit.
Yeah,
than you did.
There's some stuff with Dominic, right? Yeah, it's really cool.
And they kind of still harping back to that a little bit. I'm sure when they went right to Dom Mysterio as Punk's first house show opponents this past year. Yeah. So cool stuff there. You're right. It was more so one of those stipulations that kind of gave away the finish because nobody expected, Rey Mysterio to be running with the Straight Edge Society, right? Just one of those stips that, in the mid-20s of Manias, there was always kind of one that kind of gave away a finish, right? And then the next year, which came off of a Royal Rumble confrontation in 2011 when CM Punk cost Randy Orton a match against The Miz. And then, ended up leading to this WrestleMania feud. This one got a little bit more time, though, 14 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, our esteemed colleague Ryan was higher on this than Meltzer was. He had 3 3/4. Meltzer had 3. Canton had 3.25. Overall, it was a pretty good match. I mean, Orton was kind of in the middle 20s of WrestleMania. Orton was just kind of there to show up, do as little as he could to put a decent match together, and he was kind of a flat babyface at this point. But Punk, just coming with the new Nexus and whatnot, he was kind of, I don't know, he was kind of in limbo himself here. What are your takeaways from this match?
Yeah, so I mean, you get guys like Punk and Orton. The story kind of wrote itself. Punk costing Randy at Rumble, and especially to the Miz, that's a whole other story. But But Punk and Orton, and sometimes guys don't need belts involved, right, to have good matches. And I thought this was a decent match. You know, a semi-interesting storyline of having these two kind of just, like you said, both kind of in that middle of changing over and wondering what direction this was going to take both of them. But, you know, I think I enjoyed this one a little more than any of the Money in the Bank ones. Yeah, and the Mysterio one.
Right. At this point, this was probably the best like in-ring Punk performance yet at a WrestleMania. And again, I think a lot of that I give credit to Punk because Orton was very much a through the motions type of guy at this point. Orton really was more of a, you know, we can make the match important by some of the stuff I'm going to do to build the match, but then the bell's going to ring and it's not going to be that great, right?
Yeah.
But Punk performed here, and I feel like this was a spot where they really trusted him with like upper main eventer to kind of, you know, prepare him for what would be coming next. And I think he delivered for the most part. I mean, it's not a match that I think you have to run to go see, but I definitely think it set him up to have, you know, his next two big WrestleMania years, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
So then at 28, we were in Miami, which was once in a lifetime, which is the highest grossing WrestleMania of all time because of who was on top, which was, like I said before, John Cena against The Rock. Now, this was the WWE Championship match where CM Punk came in as the champion, defending against Chris Jericho. Now, the stip here was that Punk could lose the match if he was disqualified. He could lose the title if he had been disqualified in this match. So, pretty good match. Again, not one of my favorite matches of all time, but definitely was cool to see Punk walk into a Mania as a champion and walk out as the champion as well. What do you take away with this one?
So, yeah, another thing, like we said, Punk gets kind of screwed again. You know, with being the world heavyweight champion or the WWE champion at the time and still not headlining. So, which was kind of disappointing. But like you said, you have Rock Cena, you have no other choice. But was this the feud where Jericho was doing all that great stuff with the Jack Daniels and
Yeah, so this was the first big match that they had, but then they kind of got into that stuff before the rematch at Extreme Rules, which was in Chicago, I believe. It was in Rosemont. That was again when they were kind of underneath Cena and Brock at that show.
It keeps going.
That was one of those when I talked to I actually had Jericho back at 35. And that was one of those moments when you look back at the two matches, and in the second match was probably better than the Mania match, right?
Yeah.
Which happened a lot to WWE in like the Extreme Rules backlash phases, is you would have the first match of a feud at WrestleMania, but then the better match the next month. And to your point with that, it became a street fight because it got real personal.
That was
harping back to Punk's drunk dad, pouring the Jack Daniels down his throat as a straight edge, which is the most disrespectful thing you could do to a straight edge person. Yep. This was definitely kind of the start of what became better over time. But it still wasn't a bad match. I mean, Ryan was with a 4 here. It's probably more in like the 3.25 range. But you know, 22 minutes, maybe a match that would have been better a little bit less time, where like his Ray match could have got more time. But overall, it was still in a co-main spot. And again, we're talking about a guy that 6 years earlier wasn't even a wrestler yet, and he was a part of an entrance. And in this show, he's walking in the champion and leaving as a champion. So all in all, I think it's a cool moment for Punk to look back on.
It was great. And you got two guys, too, extremely proficient on the microphone. They never disappointed in any of the segments building up to these Mania matches. I mean, the Mania match with the two of them. And I love that it was for the championship. I'm glad that it was Punk Jericho for the title itself and not just kind of like the Randy Orton, even though everything's different. But it actually had something on the line in this one.
Right. And then we went into his last WrestleMania match, at least at this time. And that was at 29, which we were both at. This felt like the main event to a lot of people.
Oh, it did. Yep.
It had the awesome go-home angle with the urn when, you know, it was just like cringy, right? You didn't expect it. And I feel like this was the end of the great Undertaker WrestleMania matches, right? He had the two with Michaels, 25 and 26. He had the two with Triple H, 27 and 28. There was a little bit of intrigue in those matches that he could lose, but once you kind of understood how those stories were going, you figured out that he wasn't really going to ever lose those. This was a match that you could have talked me into him losing, And it would have been something that would have been a good do-right by Punk, or for Punk, because he dropped the 435-day title reign to Dwayne at Royal Rumble that year, so he could give it back to Cena at WrestleMania for their rematch. But this was one of those, hey, you can't have the title, but you can have the streak, right? Yeah. And Heyman, he'll be the 1 and 21-1. There was just a lot of cool build to this match. And although I know, and everybody knows, that Punk was pissed off they didn't have the main event here, and the build to this match, you certainly did not know that.
Oh my God. Yeah. So this was probably, I know we go back to the Mysterio and all that stuff, but this was probably the darkest version of Punk that I could remember watching. And the one that just I always go back to is that segment. I think you said it was that the go home show right before Mania where he did the Paul Bear imitation right after he just passed away. Then he brings the urn out. I hate to laugh, but he's fumbling it and he's pretending to drop it. I mean, you couldn't get any more personal than the urn with Paul Bear and the Undertaker. And like you said too, I know hindsight's 20/20, but Punk winning that match, especially after losing to Dwayne, Punk would have, I think it would have just propelled him, and it could have just did even bigger things for him, maybe even mentally, if they had given him that win, where he could have kind of calmed down a little bit with the whole backstage drama and that sort of thing.
Right. I say that all the time. If Punk wins this match, he probably never leaves WWE, right?
I agree, yeah.
Or at least it's delayed for a few years till the injury started to really build up, right? It wouldn't have been as angsty as it happened because he felt second fiddle. And even on this show, he wasn't not only was he second fiddle to The Rock and Cena, but he was also second fiddle to Triple H and Brock too, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of is something that gets lost in translation. And that Brock and Triple H match, honestly, not a bad match, but it had to follow this, right? Which all the emotion was there for this because people had talked themselves into the fact that Punk was going to win this match, right?
Yeah.
And it did make so much sense. And then if you look back at it now, they're at WrestleMania 40, and now we're at WrestleMania, going back to 30 when he did lose. Things might have been a lot better for everybody involved if Punk got the win here.
And plus, too, it's like, again, since WrestleMania 30, unless I'm mistaken, and I'm sure it's been mentioned, Brock has never used beating The Undertaker as like this big accomplishment in his career. Punk would have been all over this. To this day, he would have probably mentioned it during like the Seth Rollins eventual match that they were supposed to have. He probably would have brought up the fact that he beat The Undertaker.
Yeah, it catapulted Brock into that like squash with Cena at SummerSlam, which probably would have been Danielson if he didn't get hurt, right?
Yeah,
which would have been kind of a wacky year for Brock with two kind of heartbreaking things for fans, right? But at the end of the day, it's all in all, the energy in the building for this was phenomenal. The Taker entrance was just him like rising from the dark.
It was pretty sick.
Fans there was pretty cool. And what made Punk's entrance even cooler here is Living Color was there to play him out. So perfect. I'm sure at some point down the line we'll get that again because he maintains a good relationship with those guys. But it just felt like such an epic moment and really stole the show at this Mania.
And you could have found the biggest of Undertaker Attitude Era traditionalists. You could have pulled them, and most of them, if I'm not, maybe 50-50 would have been perfectly fine with Punk beating The Undertaker there.
Yeah, and if Punk wins this match, maybe we're talking about a 5-star match because I feel like that extra star that everybody was missing here could have been added with a shock finish. So
definitely.
Overall, so we've been through the 7 matches now. Punk 3-4 at WrestleMania in those 7 matches with an average of 3.69. Now, again, he really only had 4 singles matches, one of which was 6 minutes. His singles work got better each year, and it sucks that then we had to wait what felt like 10 years before we get another one, but it's really going to end up being 11 or 12, whatever it ends up being, right?
Yeah.
But what obviously we'll kind of already answer my next question. Would making his resume, if he beats Undertaker and goes to 3-4 but has a win over Undertaker, his resume is a lot stronger. He's probably a top 10 or 15 performer on this list. And not only because then he beats the Undertaker, but he probably would have stuck around. So do you think that that's the simplest little tweak that WWE could have made to improve Punk's resume and got him higher on our NoSo Countdown?
100%. I'll always look back at looking back at this list. I mean, anybody on this list that you see long term, I guess, like you said, there was more build and build and build, but He beats The Undertaker there. I'll die to my grave saying that alone, like Vince or whoever was telling him, you're beating The Undertaker tonight, would have instantly changed maybe some sort of relationships that would have went on in the future there. Maybe he even headlines the following WrestleMania. Like, I just, who you don't know. But just losing to him, and then I'll be honest, I forgot all about Triple H Brock following that match until you just said it, which is not what you want to remember. But
right,
I think, man, I really do think him beating The Undertaker, that feather in the cap, having that bragging point now for years. He probably would have even mentioned it in AEW at some point.
Right,
but,
right. Maybe he never even ends up there.
No, yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? And then he kind of just became second fiddle after that, right? Like he was a baby face with Daniel Bryan feuding with the Wyatts in the fall of that year. Then he was eliminated in the Rumble which was his last night by Kane, and that was supposedly going to set up a match with Triple H, which would have been cool.
Corporate Kane.
Right,
even
which would have been
worse.
cool, but it's still, I mean, him leaving probably is what catapulted Danielson to the next level. So that's what him leaving was a positive, right? But that doesn't help his resume. So yeah, and we kind of already spoke of the multi-man matches, the short Mysterio match, the kind of boring Orton match, and almost too long Jericho match. Those hurt his resume, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, if we're talking 39 WrestleManias when we compiled this list, being 29th isn't bad.
Not at all. It's pretty high. 3 and 4 record, 3 of them being ladder matches with 6, 7 other guys. Pretty high on this list. Yeah.
Right. And if we do this again at 50, hopefully we have a lot more Punk matches to talk about,
Yeah, maybe a main event or two.
Right. Hopefully. So what do you have to plug? You have anything to plug as we head on out of here and head to 28?
Yeah, so I just want to thank you guys for having me on. We really appreciate it. We are the Pudgyboyz SportsTalk channel. We have a mixture of wrestling. My friend Eric, he's a big guy on UFC. We love football. It's just a mixture of sports altogether and sports entertainment. Obviously, we're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok with the same exact names. And again, just like you guys, just like I said before, we really appreciate hooking up, getting together, and hopefully in the future having more of these collaborations. This is a great idea you guys are doing with this countdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a lot of fun getting to talk to you here, Mike. And NoSo Countdown's going to keep hammering on as we have just a few weeks now until WrestleMania. We still have 28 names to get through, and some of them might surprise you. Some of them might end up being, arguments and things of that nature. Someone's ranked too high. I personally have seen the list, and I think it's pretty good. There's only a couple tweaks I would have, so stay tuned. There's a lot more coming here. You can also catch me on ChroNoSo monthly, which we do, once or twice a month. And as I've talked about this a few times now in these, if you've listened to all of them, it's College Basketball Month. So you're going to be hearing a lot from me over the next couple of weeks in regards to that. So again, we thank you so much, Mike. Stay tuned to all of these future 28 numbers. And then let's have some discourse and argue it all in the comments. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your WrestleMania season. Later.
Thanks, guys.